Hi, sorry, I'm late. Nobody came to get me. And
It's your fault. I was about to send her out to come and get you. My bad.
Okay, well, here I am. Hi, how you doing? Thanks for...
We're good. We were just talking about you, believe it or not.
Wow.
But we had lots of good things to say.
Well, that's good. That's nice. So here I am. And we're going to talk a little bit. I thought I'd just catch you up on what I've been doing with my life in the last 76 years. No.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, what have I been doing? Well, I do a recurring role on Madam's Secretary, a show called Madam's Secretary. I play a wonderful character, and I'm hoping he does some more in the new season. In the last year, I've made 4 independent films. The first one was with Cloris Leachman called This Is Happening, and it sort of disappeared without a ripple. And then I did a really interesting movie which opened, which will be released, general release sometime in, I think in October, called Certain Women with Michelle Williams and Kristen Stewart and Laura Dern. My part was with Michelle Williams.
Nice.
And she's just a fabulous person and a great actress, and I had a good time doing that. And then the next film I did just a few weeks ago opened at the Los Angeles Film Festival and won the jury prize for the best fiction film. And that was written and directed by our son, Remy, and stars his wife, Kate. It's called Blood Stripe. And the blood stripe is that stripe the red stripe that goes down a Marine officer's trousers. And it's a story of a female Marine, a lioness, returning from 3 tours of duty in Afghanistan and her struggle to come home. And it was all shot in northern Minnesota, beautiful country, and that was great. And and then it went to the Provincetown Film Festival, and our son won the John Schlesinger Award for the best first-time director. So that was all exciting for us. And then I did a film called Cortex, and I don't know anything about that yet, but that's kind of...
But you did it.
I did do it.
You got paid, right?
Well, you barely get paid for that. So what else do I do? When I go back on Monday, I'm flying back to LA, and the following day, I will start recording for 3 days. I think it's the 15th of the series of the Pendergast novels. Yeah, I read these novels, and they're exhausting to read, but people do enjoy them. And it'll be 11 hours of reading, and it'll take me 3 days to do it.
Real marathon. Marathon.
Yeah, bit of a marathon. I've okay.
All right. Yeah, sold American.
No, I thought it was someone here singing to me. What else can I tell you? We'll talk, and then I'll think of other things that I do, because I do a lot of things. I'm busier than I actually want to be at this point in my life. I was just talking to my wife. When I I flew here yesterday, and she drove from Los Angeles to Northern California, where we have a house on 40 acres of land, beautiful, in Mendocino. And so I was just talking to her, or trying to talk to her. It was so noisy out there, I couldn't hear her. But she's good, and I'll as soon as I finish the novel, I'll go back up there. Any of you coming to Las Vegas for the 50th anniversary? Well, look at Die Hard there. Get a life. Anyway.
I'll be in New York Labor Day with you for the Star Trek celebration.
Oh, great. Fantastic. Wow. So there you go. Now, Patty, what do you got to say?
Well,
he's got notes here.
Yeah, I got all sorts of notes. What would you consider to be your the thing that kind of sort of put you on the map? Was it your collaborations with Robert Altman, MASH, and McCabe and Miss Miller? Because I know you were very involved with theater at the time, but I think that was your first breakout film role.
You've done your homework. Yeah.
Well, I've seen them.
I was a New York actor, and previous to that, I had been working in regional theater, repertory theater. I started at the Arena Stage in Washington, D.C., and then started a company that's still going in San Francisco called the American Conservatory Theater, ACT. And I met Robert Altman while I was in rehearsals for a Broadway show. I was offered this part of Dago Red, or Father Mulcahy, and the part actually didn't have any lines in the script. And he said, but, maybe you'll make up some lines. And so it was a very, that was the first film that I was in all the way through. I had done little parts in 2 other films, one called Lilith, with Gene Seberg and Warren Beatty. And that was when I was working at Arena Stage in Washington. And then another film when I was in San Francisco called Petulia with Julie Christie and George C. Scott. And
Really?
A few years later, but I was just a day player and they didn't know. Then a few years later, I did a film for Robert Altman after MASH. After we shot MASH, I did a film called McCabe and Mrs. Miller, which starred Warren Beatty and Julie Christie. So it was sort
Very
of
dark film.
fun, a beautiful film. I think his
Yeah.
greatest film. Anyway, so I would say that in terms of, general
Door opening.
knowledge or whatever, I was 29 years old, and MASH was a big success, and then I went on doing that, and then...
Now, I heard a story about On the Patriot, your role there as the parson. Someone's giving you instructions. We want it to be a little bit like Father Mulcahy. Do you know that character? And you had to correct somebody about it?
Well, what it was my agent called, and he said, they're doing a film called The Patriot, and they would love you to come in and meet them. And I said, okay. And they said... the agent, he was a young agent in the office, and he said, and the character is kind of like, they want the character to be sort of like, the priest in MASH. Do you know that part? And I said, yeah, I know that part. So I went in and I met them, and they asked me to do that part, and I was happy to do it.
There you go. Knocked around, did some solid work in the 70s. I wanted to ask you, you worked with Ross Martin on Night Gallery. You worked with Robert Conrad and Baba Black Sheep, and then you worked with both of them on the Wild Wild West films. What was that experience like?
Well, Ross Martin was a great actor.
Yes, he was.
I did Night Gallery with him.
Mm-hmm.
It was really a 2-character piece, and it was just great to get a chance. I was very young, and he was terrific. And then I guess I don't know whether Baba Black Sheep came after that or before.
It was after.
That. Was it after?
Yeah.
God.
I got it in my notes here. It's good.
Wow,
Yeah.
great. I did Baba Black Sheep, and I was, just a guest on the show. And Robert Conrad was kind of tough. He it's not that he was mean. He just wasn't very interested in me. And I remember at one point we were getting ready to stage a fight sequence. And he said, I think we better get the stuntman over here to do this. And the director said, oh, I think he can do it, pointing to me. And Robert Conrad said, well, I don't know, I have to punch him in the stomach. And somehow my instincts told me to tense my stomach muscles because he punched me in the stomach to show me that it wasn't going to work. But because I anticipated it, I was like rock hard. And he went, oh, okay. And then after that, we did 2 movies for TV, Wild Wild West Revisited and more Wild Wild West. And that was just a lot of fun. And I was playing another nitwit, which would eventually, he was a British character, but he was sort of the forerunner to Clayton on Clayton Endicott III on Benson.
King Kong came around. That was a tremendous cast, and you stole every scene from Charles Grodin, in my opinion.
Oh no, nobody steals a scene from Charles Grodin. I'll tell you that. No, Charles Grodin.
Oh, come on, when you said you could fill the tank with piss.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. In my business, when you're a character actor and you're not some big international star who's, turning down every offer and whatever, you kind of, at this point in my life, when you say King Kong, I think, oh yeah, King Kong. That's the house that bought the house, our first house in Hollywood. Yeah, that was the house that King Kong bought. And then the next house we had, that was the house that Benson bought. And then our 42 acres up in Mendocino County, that was the spread that Star Trek bought. And
I believe you said at the time, one of the impetuses for DS9 was you had 2 daughters in college?
I had 2 kids in college.
Yeah.
One of them would be insulted if I called him a daughter. But
I'm paraphrasing from, I won't say how long ago that interview was.
That's okay. That's great that you... Yeah, our son, the son who wrote and directed Bloodstripe, was starting Wesleyan. Our daughter was already at Sarah Lawrence. And they were both going to very expensive universities. And I remember my wife saying when he was accepted at Wesleyan, she said, well, how are we going to pay for that? And I said, well, we either sell the house or I have to get a series. And Star Trek came along, so that was great.
Right before we jump into Star Trek, and then we'll take care of you, I wanted to ask the supreme life imitating art of your episode of Wonder Woman, which took place in a science fiction convention.
I know, my God.
And now here you are.
Here I am at a science fiction convention, yes. Isn't that weird? Yeah.
But you got to play with the Robbie the Robot costume.
That's true. And I got to work with Linda Carter, a great beauty and a sweet woman. And I remember I said, could I have an autographed picture? It's for my son. And it actually is for my son, and he still has it somewhere. I don't know where, but anyway.
So we'll flash into the Star Trek stuff now. Your small part in Star Trek 6, was that almost like an a la carte sort of thing, or was it after that they approached you for DS9?
Nick Meyer was a friend at the time, and still is, but and he called and he said, I've written and I'm directing the next Star Trek feature, and I'm asking some of my friends to do cameos, which is a very nice way of saying little tiny part and little tiny money. And he said, but it would be fun, And I said, sure, Nick, if nothing, if a real job doesn't come along. And so I agreed to do it. And I remember I had to go get fitted for the Starfleet officer's uniform. And it went fine, and they fitted me. And the wardrobe person said at the end of the fitting, she said, yeah, you don't know what you're in for now. And I really didn't know what I was in for, And in fact, Nick called me just before the film opened, and he said, you know what, I have to tell you that because the character was supposed to be an assassin, an officer who is trying to kill the counselor or whoever he was trying to kill. I don't know.
The head of the Klingon case.
Yeah, the head guy, the big cheese. And then he gets shot. And
Actually, it was for the Klingon Council.
okay.
Never mind. Keep on.
Well, you know, I'm sure you know better than I.
No, I don't.
Because I've never seen the film. So,
It's a good movie.
yeah.
It's a good movie.
Yeah, well, it has some great actors in it. And
Touche, sir, touche.
Yeah. Anyway, so he said, well, the part has been cut. And, the part remained, but they took out that aspect of him, trying to kill him. Anyway, so
it's in it.
So I never saw it. Well, it's in the DVD version.
Yes.
It's not in the theatrical, wasn't in
That's correct.
the theatrical version.
Peel off, and it's you underneath.
Yeah. And many, or a few years later, when I was doing Star Trek, and we were Deep Space Nine, and we were in shooting the pilot. Colomini came to me, and because he'd been doing Next Gen, and he said, "I'm supposed to do a convention." In fact, the gentleman is here who was at that convention, I think. He said, I'm supposed to do a convention in Chicago, but I can't go there. Would you do it? And I said, well, they won't know who I am. He said, they'll know more about it than you know about it. And I went to it, and the crowd was nice, but they didn't know who I was, and they didn't know anything about Deep Space Nine yet. So they were sort of reserving judgment, but if they knew me at all, they knew me as that nitwit Clayton Endicott III. So I think a lot of them were wondering, well, how could a guy like this, a character like that, play, a major character in the Star Trek franchise? But I was doing all right. I was answering questions, and then someone asked me how I enjoyed playing Colonel West. And I didn't remember that was the name of the character I had played. And I thought they might have been confusing it with Wild Wild West. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. And the audience said, they thought I was a total...
And then you told him to get a life, right?
Yeah, right. Well, now I can do that. I couldn't do that then. Believe me.
Well, Bill did it for you.
So, anyway, did I answer a question in all that babbling that I've just done? I don't know.
Well, how did you get approached for DS9 and Odo? Did they tell you up front it was a makeup role, or?
Yes, they did. But every actor in LA was trying to get into that series.
Yeah.
I was actually not the way the character was described in the script. The character was originally conceived of as a much younger kind of Clint Eastwood sheriff in the world of Deep Space Nine. And, I've told this story often, but a good casting director, as Junie Lowry certainly is and was at the time, if the producers and the writers and the director are going to meet a lot of actors for a role, and the role is supposed to be like a Clint Eastwood, they'll maybe see 50 actors all coming in like Clint Eastwood, and so a good casting director will throw in people who are nothing that they've imagined, just so they have a different idea. Not that she thinks or they think it's going to change, but it's just so that they sort of clean their palate, so to speak. So I walked in and I did it. And again, I've told this many times, but Ron Surma, the assistant casting director, when it was my turn to go in to meet them, as we got to the door, he turned to me and he said, "Nobody's been grouchy enough." And he opened the door and I walked in with that in my mind, and they were all sitting behind a table like this, longer. Writers, director, the director, Rick Berman, everybody. And in my mind is nobody's been grouchy enough. And they were very polite to me. They said, "Hi, thank you for coming in." And they said, they started to introduce me to everybody. And I think I said something about, "We can do that after you give me the job." And the voice came out like that. And that was Odo.
Sold.
Yeah. And what I didn't know is that when I left the room, Rick Berman turned and he said, "I think that's the guy." But there was.
I think he was right.
Well, I went back 4 more times because there was one executive from Paramount who just could not see me in the role. Could not. It was at the last meeting. I had come back one more time. I said, I won't come back anymore. It's yes or no and whatever. And it was on a Friday, and they were tired, and they were trying to cast. They were more worried about casting Jadzia. They hadn't been able to find Terry Farrell yet, and this executive was saying something about, "Well, you like that woman, she's not right." And it's like the way you like that guy who's not right for the role, who doesn't look right for the role. And Rick Berman said, you realize he's going to have rubber all over his face. And the executive said, "Oh, well, that's okay then." So there.
Young lady, you're waiting so long, you can get 2 questions if you want.
Hi.
Oh, now you got to make me think. My first question is, all the episodes that you did with Majel, if you have any behind the scenes, what was it like working with Majel as Luoxana?
It was great. And she was at that at the first convention I ever went to. And I was very nervous because I was going to go out and meet a lot of people and I didn't think I knew anything. I didn't know what I was going to talk about. And she was just a sweetheart, and she remained a sweetheart. And then, of course, in the early, in the first season, was it even? Yeah, I think it was in the first season, when we get trapped in the elevator together. That really is one of, people who followed the arc of Odo. That is one that generally is kind of a favorite. And she was just funny and generous and so supportive of not only me personally, but of the show in general. And, a lot of people who were involved in the original Star Trek, as certainly she was, but there were many people who were from the old school who didn't really approve of Deep Space Nine because it was dark and neurotic and kind of different, and it didn't seem to go anywhere.
Well, it was the first thing after Gene's passing. It was
Exactly,
the first project that was 100% without any of Gene's input.
That's right. And so there was some resistance to it, but never from Majel. Majel was always supportive and always right there and loving it. And so I consider that a real gift that I had to play I married her, actually. Yeah, so there you go.
Thank you.
I don't think she ever got her due as an actress.
I'm sorry?
I don't think she ever got her due as an actress. I thought she played that Luoxana so well.
Yeah, she made a very charming
Space anti-mame.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Did you?
Well, then my second question, the episode where Odo merges with Curzon, what kind of directions were you given for that, or was it just kind of like, here, make this up as you go? And can you tell us about that episode?
Oh, Curzon.
You got spots.
Yeah. I don't remember, honestly, whether they gave me any special. I mean, by that time, we had a sense of, who Dax was and what it's supposed to be and what that whole thing was. I think they just sort of trusted. If the script is written clearly and well, and an actor is paying attention, everything's there. You don't really have to invent anything other than what the emotional through line of the character is. So I'm afraid I can't give you any inside dope on that. Sorry.
How far into the role of Odo did you get where you really felt like, okay, I've got this absolutely figured out, to the point where you may have even questioned some things in the script saying, I don't think Odo would have done this?
That would be never.
Okay.
Because honestly, they kept every time you thought you knew, especially with Odo, but I think all our characters, I think that's because Ira Bear, who was really running the show and over the years, kept. Every time you thought you knew who your character was, he would throw a monkey wrench into it. And, when I started the show, Odo was a character who did not know where he was from or who he was or if there were any others like him in existence. And then I think after the second season, when they called me in, and because people would say, "Oh, I can't wait to find out where you're from," and I would say, "I don't ever want to know where I'm from. I think that's the most interesting thing about the character." And then, of course, the
whole second half of the entire series was predicated on where your character came from.
Great can of worms they opened up, and then another thing like the love for Kira came out of nowhere. And that, again, another story that I've told a million times, but is true, that, it was in the Necessary Evil episode where it was a flashback to Odo investigating a crime, and then but in the present, and Kira is his closest friend, the only person he really trusts, the only kind of human character that he trusts, and in the course of his investigation, he discovers that she was the culprit. And in the script, it described in the last scene when Odo confronts her, and she admits it, and it said, there was a line, something to the effect of, Odo looks at her, I don't know, with whatever, disappointment or something. The emotions are very raw for him at that point because this person that he trusts. So we shot it, and the next day, when they looked at the dailies, the film that we'd shot the day before, they watched the scene, and Ira Bear said, "Holy shit, Odo loves Kira." And from then on, they started that. And Nana and I, dear friends, both went, "What? Really? Okay." And that's what we did. But, you don't...
The kids call that shipping now.
Yeah.
You ship Odo and Kira? Yeah.
Shape shipping. Yeah. I don't know. People wonder how much influence you have on your character. And the actors are the instruments that play the music that the writers write. And when you start the show, the writers have a real vision of what it is. But then the instrument starts to influence how they write it. Not that I never, ever went to them and said, "Why don't I do this?" or "Why don't I do that?" or "Wouldn't it be good if I did that?" Because that just would have been a waste of time. And it was more fun to open a script each week and see what new aspect of a character you're playing is revealed to you and keeps it challenging. It's unlike doing a Broadway show, which you might do for 10 months, 8 shows a week, every night the same show. You can do a show like Star Trek for 7 years, and it's never the same. Every week is different, and that's a wonderful thing. Sorry.
Oh, no worries.
My question's regarding the show Benson. My favorite episode is the Christmas episode where everyone had such great singing performances. I was wondering if you had any fond memories of that specific episode and also in general working with Robert Guillaume.
Well, okay. First of all, Robert Guillaume, just one of the most beautiful, dignified men, and it was an honor to work with him and to have him as the head of the show. And he was just the best. I mean, I can't say enough about Robert Guillaume. Singing wise, he had a beautiful voice, has a beautiful voice. And I knew that because actually, I worked, my first job out of university was at Arena Stage, and he came and did a show there called The Lonesome Train, and in which he sang beautifully. But that being said, I remember that episode, which is weird because I couldn't tell you, I was in the show for 6 years, and 22 episodes, I don't remember much of it, but I
The
remember
episode when Krause and Benson get into a fight. Remember that one?
Right, yeah. That's my friend Ethan Phillips, Johnny Phillips, who played Netflix on Netflix, Neelix on Voyager. So we're great buddies, and sometimes we'll have breakfast together. And he does this to me. He'll go. And I'll go, what's funny? And he'll say, oh, I was just thinking of episode 79. But I do remember that episode. And one of the reasons I remember it is because they had all these beautiful Christmas decorations, strings of pine cones and beautiful ribbons. And the prop master, I said to him on Friday night when we finished shooting it, I said, what's going to happen to all this stuff? He said, oh, throw it away. And I took boxes of it home. And to this day, it's still decorations in my house. So there you go.
I have 2 questions.
Ooh, greedy. All right.
Yes.
Those will be our last 2, though.
Okay. First, my favorite project you did the voice of Desaad in the superhero shows. Love that character that you portrayed. So my 2 questions is regarding Star Trek. 9 years, what was it like when you had some of the Star Trek actors as directors, and what were some of your favorite directors on the show?
Oh, that's interesting.
Heavy.
Well, I was one of those actors who was a director.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And what was that like? Because
So perhaps it would be better to ask the people I directed. It was, directing was scary, and I was always feeling like I wasn't really worthy of it. And the actors were pretty good. I wish Michael Dorn were here. He's outside. We love to tease each other because Michael was always a pain in the ass. And I love this guy to death.
Worf wouldn't
I
do
just
that.
love him. And but he would always. I would say, Michael, can you? And he'd go, Renee, don't whine. Stop whining, Renee. And he was always impossible. And then he had to direct. And that's when I got even with him. No, it was always good when actors got to direct, because after an actor directed, they became the best actors to work with for the other directors, because then they knew what a difficult time and how the pressure of getting a show like that done in 8 days. So yeah, Michael directed, and of course Avery directed a number of episodes, and one that is many people think is the best episode we ever did, called Far Beyond the Stars. And that was a great experience and great to work with him.
Didn't LeVar Burton also directed maybe an episode or two?
LeVar directed,
Mm-hmm.
well, yeah, I was thinking of actors
Yeah,
who were
but
in our show.
in the
Oh, yeah,
widest-
Jonathan Frakes and LeVar directed and were total pros and a lot of fun.
Everybody got their Directors Guild card in that.
Yeah, everybody did. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, that is the end of our time. Please, a round of applause for our wonderful guest here.